good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve coming to you on the 7th of November, and the story that we're going to talk about tonight. Here we are, look at some of this stuff. The end of privacy. Big Brother is watching you. And of course this scandal is all about StatsCan. This is Statistics Canada asking the government to allow it to collect your personal banking information so that it can use it to understand inflation better. Privacy data not so private anymore. Here's another article on this issue, and of course it is absolutely outrageous. So StatsCan can require banks to hand over your financial information, and I love this joke. There you go. Can you talk into the flowers, please? This is StatsCan collecting your data from the bank. And many a true word is said in jest. Now, I came across this article here. This is in the Globe and Mail. And this is StatsCan must justify request for personal banking data, former chief says. StatsCan needs to clearly explain why it is seeking access to people's banking records, former Canadian Chief Statistician Wayne Smith says. Mr. Smith resigned as head of StatsCan 2 years ago over data security concerns, said banking records are second only to health files in terms of Canadians' most sensitive personal information. To ask for people's information about their financial transactions to be provided to Statistics Canada is extremely sensitive, and Statistics Canada should be able to say, okay, here's the purpose and here's why it's important enough to justify this intrusion, he said. If they don't have an answer, they should stop now. To this point, Mr. Smith said he has not seen a clear justification from StatsCan. Now, first of all, let's flip over. I've done some clips off the computer here as to why you should not trust the government with your sensitive information. And there's lots of them, and as I say, do a search yourself on Google or whatever search engine that you use, and you will find there is a staggering amount of data breaches. And we're not talking about Facebook or Google here, we're just talking government institutions. Okay, so I'll let you take a little look at that. And when we come back, there's another piece I'd like to refer to here. Okay, so this is why you should be concerned about data breaches and your data from banks going to StatsCan. This is from IT World Canada. Federal data breaches up 16%, Canadian Privacy Commissioner reports. Okay, now this was September 27, 2016. The number of material breaches suffered by federal government departments increased 16% to 298 for the 12-month period ending March 2016, compared to 256 the previous year, according to the Federal Privacy Commissioner's annual report. As in years before, accidental disclosure was the most common cause cited for the breaches, the report said, highlighting the need for institutions to ensure proper procedures are in place to protect Canadians' personal information. Our office has received hundreds of reports of data breaches from federal institutions, pointing to the lack of adequate safeguards. With advances in technology, government departments are collecting and using ever greater amounts of personal information without necessarily having the adequate safeguards in place, increasing the risk and potential consequences of privacy breaches. But here, down here, it says the data breach numbers for the last fiscal year were the second year government departments were obliged under Treasury Board rules to report the Privacy Commissioner's Office material data breaches. In the years before 2012 to 2013, reporting was voluntary. But the report adds there is still inconsistency in reporting. For example, there were more than 5,800 breaches recorded across all departments in 2015 and 2016, but just over 5% of those reported to Therian. Okay. Canada privacy breaches. More than 1 million Canadians may have their data compromised. This is social insurance numbers. More than 1 million Canadians may have their private information compromised by data breaches with the federal government over the last 10 years, an analyst for the Huffington Post Canada suggests. Okay, this is thousands of compromised by government information breaches. This is global news. Global News has learned there have been nearly 4,000 privacy and data breaches in the federal government departments over the last year or so. The worst offender was the Canada Revenue Agency, Jacques Boubereau reports. Okay, and this is just a cursory search on the internet. Just type in a search for Canadian government privacy breaches or data breaches, and there is a never-ending list of these breaches being reported. You just cannot trust the government to handle such sensitive data. Okay, so as you can see, there are some serious concerns about security within the Government of Canada. Their systems are antiquated and outdated, and really we need look no further than the Phoenix payroll scandal to see just how much of a disaster the government can make of anything electronic. So here we go, why StatsCan should have access to our data. And this is by Michael Wolfson, a former Assistant Chief Statistician at Statistics Canada. He's a member of the Centre for Health Law, Policy and Ethics at the University of Ottawa. And basically, he's talking about you can get more accurate prices about drug costs, about gasoline costs, food costs, all this kind of stuff, and this would allow StatsCan to make better informed decisions, and the Bank of Canada, about inflation. Now, this is absolute nonsense. This is a fallacious argument because all of the things there can be collected by other means. You do not need people's personal banking data. And I just see this as the thin end of the wedge. It will start off with this, it's anonymized, so your name is not attached to the data, it's just metadata. But you know how these things work. I'm sure that you've been in these situations. Somebody wants to borrow $10. You don't have $10, so they say, well, can you lend me a buck? Can you lend me 50 cents? Oh, well, if you give me 50 cents, can you give me a buck? How about a $1.50? You start off anywhere to get that door open. And this is opening the door. This will start the channels to provide this information from banking institutions to StatsCan. And after a while, those channels become established and they will become information pathways, and next thing you know, it won't just be metadata. They'll be seeking out personal individuals' data. Okay, now at this point I would just like to say, because I think we do tend to forget this, that government of any level would not be here if it were not for the fact that you and I were paying for it. Government has no source of funding outside of us. Well, it gets some money from resources, I know that, but basically we are the creators. We're the ones who go get those resources and create the wealth from those resources. We're the ones that pay the taxes. We're the ones that pay the HST and income tax and so on and so forth. Without us doing that, property taxes, water bills, without us doing that, government would not exist. Okay, so we are in charge here. We must always remember that. We're the ones in charge. The government was put in place to be caretakers of our resources, not to be in charge, not to tell us what we're going to do and what we're not going to do with our resources, but to manage them on our behalf through consultation. And little by little, we've got further and further away from that consultation process. And here we are on the eve of Remembrance Day. And Remembrance Day for me, part of it is remembering that it is our job at home, here in Canada or whatever country you live in, to maintain the democracy that we have. We send our children, our boys and girls, men and women overseas to fight on our behalf to either protect or bring democracy or prevent a dictator from stopping democracy and from flourishing in different countries. And whilst they're away laying down their lives on the line to protect our way of life, the things that we enjoy most living in first world conditions, okay, it is incumbent upon us especially as we're not doing it at risk of life or limb. This is just a matter of speaking up to maintain our democracy, and this is part of it. StatsCan, you are not getting my information. I am protesting this on this video, and I encourage everybody to protest this move by StatsCan, and that the Liberal government may approve. Okay, we must fight this with all our might. This is just another chomp at your rights. You know, and what Trudeau said was that we don't have to ask for your consent because the data is anonymized. You see how they skip over the consent bit? And of course, you see, if nobody says anything, then they just continue on. That's another line drawn in the sand, and it's another inch or so further back that you've moved away from your rights, from accessing your rights, from the government respecting your rights. And that is a big part of it. The government needs to respect the Constitution and respect your right to participate in this country by being consulted, by being given all the information required to make an intelligent decision. This is absolutely outrageous, and there is no reason whatsoever. There's nothing. There's not even the necessity, because as I said, StatsCan can get all of this information from other locations. These pharmaceutical companies, they file tax returns, they tell you what they sell. You go into the nearest pharmacy, you've got a list of drugs there and what they sell for. These things are all available. Food is on the shelves of the supermarket, for goodness sake. You don't need to look into my bank account to understand the nature of inflation in this country. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that. This is Hound Dog Steve signing off, and we'll talk real soon. You take care now. See ya. Bye now.